Hi there, and welcome to month one and week 3 of the 5 a day. And this is all about shoes today. So, it's really important. We've looked at foot alignment and we've looked at exercises for your feet to help keep them flexible and mobile. And so, what is obviously really important next is what you're wearing on your feet. If you're wearing shoes that prevent your toes from spreading and moving as they need to, prevent your foot from expanding as it hits the ground, tips you forwards into onto your toes, which also creates an impact on the position, the alignment of the rest of your body, then you need to start working to having more foot friendly shoes. So on the whole, shoes are designed um, as a fashion item rather than as something practical. And you'll be able to see this when you look at the difference between a shoe that you buy from a standard shoe shop and a barefoot shoe. To the eye, the barefoot shoe, the foot friendly shoe, kind of looks quite big and clumpy. I've got an example here. I don't know whether you can see. This one has got a much rounder toe box than this one. And you can see that. So this yellow one is designed to contain all the toes in their natural spread position. So there are checking how many I've listed down. 1, 2, 3. There are 5 things you need to think about when you're looking at barefoot shoes, and it's important to have those in mind rather than going to a website to buy barefoot shoes, because quite often there are nowadays things that are described as barefoot shoes and they have some issues with them. It also means that if you can't afford the barefoot shoes, and admittedly they are pretty expensive, then you can start scouting around normal shoe shops and getting something that ticks all the boxes of a foot friendly shoe. So number one is obviously the toe box that we talked about just now. And the best way to have a look at that is to put your bare foot, on a piece of paper and draw around it. Try and spread your toes as wide as possible while you're doing it. Then put your shoe on the top of that picture and draw around it, and see what the difference is between the space your toes need to have and the space your toes do have. A fun thing to do is also to do your barefoot with spread toes, then put your socks on and draw around them, and then put your shoe on top of that and draw around it, and you'll start to see how restrictive even socks can be for the feet, which is something important to think about. Your toes need to be able to spread and grip and mould around the surface that you're walking on. And if your toes are squished together, they have no ability to do that. And then it leads on to the things such as bunions, plantar fasciitis, hammer toe, all those standard modern foot problems that we have. So that's your first point. The second thing is to make sure you've got no heel on your shoe. A heel on your shoe tips you forwards onto your toes, which apart from anything, they're made up of lots and lots of little bones, which are not designed to be weight bearing, but as I said, to be flexible and to mould around the surface. So if you're putting all your weight onto the front of your toes, you're also creating extra pressure on those little joints. And the other thing you're doing further up your body, if you're tipped forward, is it pushes your pelvis forward, and then in order to keep your balance, you kind of bring your upper body back. So it creates some pressures on your knees and your hips, the small of your back, and right up to your neck. So even a tiny, tiny heel is going to create problems. Even if you don't feel it, over time that pressure will build up. So something useful to think about is this shoe looks quite flat, doesn't it? It looks like the heel here is level with the sole, but actually if you feel inside this shoe, you'll find that it's got a built-in heel, and it's not one that you can take out. So I think it's really important to think about and have a look at and explore your shoes to see whether there is a heel built in, which brings us to an arch support as well, because this has got a sole, a heel built in. It's also got an arch support built in, and an arch support is like an orthotic. It's designed to hold your foot into a certain position. Now the great thing with your own arch of your foot is it's made up of muscles. It's the strength of the muscles that create that arch, and the reason being is that when you put your foot on the ground, your foot can spread on the floor, and it helps with gripping and keeping your balance. You've got sensors in your feet which will be able to feed back to your brain to help you balance and avoid tripping. So having an arch support and a heel stops all that. Communication from your foot to your brain, and it makes you more liable to fall and trip if you're on different uneven surfaces. If you think about the majority of the surfaces we walk on, paths and floors, it's all flat, isn't it? Even if you walk through a wood these days, there are paths marked out that are fairly flat. Yeah, it makes it kind of easier for us to walk in shoes that are preventing our feet from moving as they need to. And that brings us on to the soles as well. Your shoe needs to be flexible enough to move with the 33 joints of your foot. And to check that a sole is flexible is, can you bend it into a C shape like this? Okay, that's got flexibility all through the sole. Lovely. As opposed to this one, which has a little bit of flexibility there. Oh my god. But none everywhere else. Completely solid. And again, and being solid, it's also quite thick. And again, both of those things prevent your foot from being able to discover what the surface is like that you're walking on, and so feedback to your brain. And this is where it also stops your foot from being able to flex as it walks. So you need to be able to, you walk onto, if this is your foot, you walk onto the base of the heel at the back, come down in a, I don't know what kind of motion, this kind of motion, and then come off again as you walk. So you're kind of nice and secure. Thick-soled shoes particularly, and ones that don't flex, make you walking more flat-footed, or striking at the back of your heel here to kind of thump down like that. And that also obviously creates a lot of what's the word, shock to the rest of your joints, your ankle, your knee, your hip, your back. So you'll find that if you're continuously walking with these kind of shoes, you're putting those little pressures every step on. With every step, you're putting that pressure onto the rest of your body. There's some quite good films of comparing toddlers going in barefoot shoes and thick-soled shoes, which really kind of bring home the point of that. I'm just thinking whether I might link that in the as another video in here. Okay, let me just check that I've got everything. Oh yes. So the last point is how the shoe attaches to your foot. If you wear things like flip-flops or slip-on shoes that only slip on at the front, but don't attach at the back, what that does is it causes your toes to grip to keep the shoe on your foot. So that gripping causes tension and tightness here on the top of your foot. And again, obviously it restricts the movement that your foot can make when you walk. So to recap, you need to have shoes that have a wide toe box, no heel, no arch support, a nice flexible sole, and attached to the foot somehow. So the things I will say is, as you're making this transition down to more foot friendly shoes, is to go slowly, particularly with the heel. If you're used to walking with a high heel, coming down to no heel is going to cause you lots of problems. You need to do that gradually. So the calf, doing lots of calf stretches regularly is something that's going to help to lengthen the back of the leg, so that you can eventually start to have a flatter sole. Yeah, and the same with the cushioning. If you really got a really thick soled shoe, then don't go to like a really extremely thin sole. There are ways that you can have find ones with a little bit of a thicker sole, or put some padding in there, because you are going to again obviously create some problems if you've got quite weak and tight foot muscles, and then you're expecting them to move and be mobile. Just suddenly out of the blue you're going to have issues. So that ball rolling that we did last week, that's going to help with remobilizing your feet, ready for moving into barefoot. So that's the end of this lesson. I hope you can take these things away with you and find yourself some shoes that are going to help your feet be more mobile and get stronger. And as usual, any questions, come into the group and ask. And happy footing. All right, take care. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.